Hey everybody, it's Tony here from mapsforkids.com. Today we're going to do another cycling video. Did a ride down the Euro Velo 6 cycling route from Melk to Vienna, Austria, 75 plus miles, 120 something kilometers along the Euro Velo 6. And the first part of this is going to be the Relive video that basically takes data from my Garmin Edge Explore, syncs it up to this app, and is able to create this video. There's a basic membership and an advanced membership. Costs a little extra. The basic one's free. Basically gives you a really great 4K video of the route. In the advanced version you can do speed, add different music, and any pictures you take during the ride are integrated into the video. So places you stop here like Dürnstein, I was able to take some pictures there, and those show up in the Relive video. The ride is through the Wachau Vineyard area. It's a very hilly section of the Danube River where much of the white wine grapes in Austria are grown. Also a lot of the orchards for apricots, cherries, things like that. So a really great section through there, about 15, 20, maybe even 25 miles worth, before it gets out into some of the floodplains of the Danube, and basically just along the river trail the entire way. Of the 120 plus kilometers, only a few miles are on real roads. There's some small tracks that go through towns along the way, especially in the beginning of the ride. But as you go further down, it becomes a very wide, good 20-foot wide paved trail. I think the entire route is paved, and it basically, like I said, is part of this larger EuroVelo 6 route that goes from the French coastline all the way to the Black Sea, and we'll see that in a minute. So basically right here, just going through this initial Relive video that it generated. After that, we're going to talk a little bit about the EuroVelos, and then add in the GoPro footage from the day. The video is a little long, so if you want to skip ahead to some of the GoPro stuff, you can. But it's a really great route to take, almost perfectly flat, and gets you back to Vienna. So 5+ hours, 120 plus kilometers. Really great day there. So that's the Relive part. Now the EuroVelos, it's a network of 17 long distance cycling routes. They're planning for 90,000 kilometers. 55,000 miles. They're probably close to 50,000 now. The data I see here says 45,000 kilometers or 27,000 miles that are done already. So pretty fantastic. They really crisscross, as you see from the map here. I mean, you can go from Lisbon all the way up to Scandinavia. The reddish pink one is the one that I did. That's the 6. It goes, like I said, from the French coast, the Atlantic, all the way through, then along the Loire and the Rhine and the Danube, all the way to the Black Sea. There's some that go down through Italy, up through Scandinavia into the Baltic states, down to Athens. So really, really fantastic coverage there. I plan to do a lot more. The EV6 is the one that I was on today through Austria. That section that I did is the rivers route, as described, Loire and Danube, and just a really fantastic way to see some of this countryside that a lot of the river cruises do, like Viking and so on. So, yep, you just follow the signs. They're all over, and we'll get into more of the detail then later. So my gear is a Marin Dsx 1, is actually a bit of a thick tired bike for this kind of thing, using Garmin Edge Explore to get the data, and GoPro for the video recordings. So the morning started off with a ride down from where I live to the Westbahnhof, the West train station of Vienna. It's an older station, and much of the train traffic, ever since the East Block opened up, has now been rerouted through the new main train station in Vienna, which is a couple of miles to the southeast of this West station. Kind of classic mid-century architecture from the 20th century. I've been living in Vienna at different times over the last 40 years, and this place has never really changed, but always a great place to get started. If you're trying to ride out to Melk, train takes just under an hour, goes through some of the fields. In the north of this view here, maybe 10 miles up, is the Danube that the ride goes back along, but the train just gets you out that 80-90 miles that you need to go in about an hour, and gets you into Melk. Melk is famous for this really large monastery, which you're going to see come into the picture here as I ride out of the train station. It's just a half mile or so down the hill from the train station to the monastery. It's up on a hill. Really great place to visit. Tons of tourism, people coming by train, people stopping with the river cruises to go up and see it. They have a really fantastic library up there, kind of reminiscent of what you see in like the Harry Potter Hogwarts library, which I think is based on the big library in Dublin. So coming down the hill, get into the town square of Melk. Melk is a small town of maybe 10,000 people. With the fast trains these days, there are actually people who commute to Vienna to work. And as you see, a lot of cobblestone in these old towns, but just a great little place to visit for a day trip out of Vienna. See the monastery. When you're up on top of the hill, you have a fantastic view down to the Danube River. And you can look at that view. So basically, as I came down here, realized that I hadn't started my bike computer yet. So just when I got down to the bottom, I decided to take a minute and stop and reset everything to get started. There's the monastery up on the hill, and as I cut across this one crosswalk here, it's really one of the only times you're crossing a bigger street. There are 4 different places you have to cross the Danube to ride the way I did this time. The Melk Bridge, the Krems Bridge, the Greifenstein Power Plant Bridge, and then the bridge across the north end of the Danube Island in Vienna on the way back. It's not the only way to do it, but it's the way I like to do it. There are some ferries up here in the northern section of the trail. They operate mostly in the summer. I think there's very limited operation in the winter. You really have to check. I'll put a link in the description below for those ferries. But yeah, this is the one little hill, a little double switchback, 15% hill, get you up to the Melk Danube Bridge. And that's basically it as far as hill climbing for the entire day. It's a downhill stretch. These are the EuroVelo signs. You see them everywhere. Because you can go on either side of the Danube, there are trails on both sides. There are a lot of options. Like I said, with the ferries, you can go down on the east side a little bit and then take a ferry across. The ferries run every half hour, every hour, for a small fee. But yeah, always looking for those signs. And here we are crossing the Danube for the first time on this bridge. You can see that we're pretty high up over the river. The Danube really is an impressive river, a couple of 100 yards wide, just keeps getting wider as it goes through Vienna and then on into Hungary and through former Yugoslavia and down to Romania, where it reaches the Black Sea. Coming off the bridge, we just have to cross the one little road again and get onto the trail that starts taking us through some of these really small towns that make the Wachau region, this wine and fruit region, so much fun to visit. Traffic out here, really not much of an issue. I've never had any problems with cars at the crossing. They're really respectful of the crosswalks. But yeah, just heading down along the trail now, and we're going to start passing through some of these smaller towns. In the early part, before we get to the hills of the Wachau, still a lot of just big open fields with wheat and corn. A lot of fruit trees along the way. I was thinking I should have taken more of a backpack to collect some stuff, but I'll head out again next week with the car. My wife and I'll pick some apples. Anything along the open trails here is basically free for anyone to take. So now we're going through our first town. I believe it's Grimming, and just lots of these probably 16th, 17th century churches and chapels along the way. A lot of these buildings built with some seriously thick masonry. I mean, 3-foot thick walls and so on. This section here is where we start to get into a lot of the orchards. Apricots, cherries, peaches, and plums do really well here. Apples, a little less. The area for apples is more to the west of this. Yeah, you can see a lot of folks out riding. During the summer, there'll be a lot of families with kids doing the EuroVelo 6. There are so many places to stay overnight. So many places for kids to have fun. Lots of like swimming lakes and swimming pools and things like that even in the heat of the summer, families can really do great rides and know that they're going to be able to get someplace where they can get the kids refreshed. Going through Schwallenbach here, another one of these just really old towns. Always impressed with the stonework, not just the churches but the walls and the terraces. This has been a wine region for close to 2,000 years, and basically the vineyards have been planted on terraces going up the sides of the hills here. It's just a perfect natural environment for growing grapes with these hills facing the south. You'll see a little bit of that later on. This is the town of Spitz. There is a secondary train, a really small train that we're going to get a look at a little bit later, that can actually get you here from Krems. People often will take the train out from Vienna the other way up to Krems and then take this small private train to get out to Spitz and then ride back. This weekend there's actually a Wachau marathon and half marathon that's going on Sunday the 25th of September 2022 here. And so this area is going to be real busy over the weekend with a couple of thousand athletes doing the half marathon and marathon. So one small town leads to another here as we go through St. Michael. This is a really interesting old church, probably 15th century, with the cemetery and again all of these rock walls, these ancient rock walls. Really no way to get lost here, with all of the signage. Those yellow signs that we just went by there, those are for hiking trails. And then, of course, this blue and white star, blue background, white star, Euro Velo signs are everywhere. We're going to get a look at one of those up close in a minute. But yeah, still the orchards on the right, and you start to see some of the terraces on the left going up the sides of the hills. And this goes, probably 20-25 kilometers through this valley, just winding its way from just outside Melk to just outside Krems. It's almost harvest time for the grapes now, and just a really great time. You kind of smell the fermentation. You have the first batches of the new wine. There are basically 4 different phases here, from the juice, which is the Sturm, which has a little bit of alcohol, and the Staubiger, which means dusty, but it's also kind of a low alcohol version of the wine, and then of course the Nouveau, the Heuriger, which means this year's wine. Again, just really cool going down some of these little narrow roads. There are some sections of cobblestone, but they've really done a nice job of repaving everything through here. There's just so much bike traffic. I saw some large groups from some of the river cruises. We're getting into Weissenkirchen here. So here, yeah, we've got these signs, and just wanted to point them out. On the right there, you can see the different crossings of the river from the ferries, and that the EuroVelo 6 sign says you can go right, take a ferry, or you can go left and stay on this side. So signs to watch out for in this section where you have these multiple ferry crossings. Now we're coming into this little town where one of my favorite bakeries, and every time I'm out here or when we're driving, it's just fantastic to stop. Right now they're only open in the mornings, but it's got some of the best fresh baked pastries you're going to find. And I always stop here and get one of their strudels. They do an apple strudel, and they also do, in the fall, they call it the fall strudel, which has a bunch of different fruits and nuts in it. Just absolutely amazing. So I never miss a chance to go there. Yeah, and this Weissenkirchen town extends. There's several of these little left-right curves as you come through. 2 curves after the bakery, you're coming up to the old church, which is, I think, also probably 13th, 14th century. And as you're leaving this town, you really get to see a lot more of the vineyards, and they're like I said, really right on the edge. Here on the left, you see the tractor and the guy. He's been bringing in grapes and starting to do those first batches of fermentation, for that early wine. Yeah, here we came down to the train crossing, and there's this, like I said, this private little train called the Wachau Bahn. I'll put a link in the description below for the schedule for that. But it's just this cute little single car that runs on this old track from Krems through the Wachau, and you can get on and off at different stops and see these little different towns if you're not riding or hiking. Leaving Weissenkirchen, you really head into the thick of the vineyards. This area has been growing grapes and producing wine since, I think they say, since the 1st century BC, with different ebbs and flows, with the Romans coming in, and then through the Dark Ages it kind of petered off. Phylloxera killed a lot in the 18th century, but it makes up about 3 to 4% of Austrian white wines, that predominantly Grüne Veltliner and Rieslings. So good, dry, fruity white wines. The terraces are what's so impressive, though, as you see those all the way up to the top of the hills. And once you come out of here, you're really kind of towards the end of the Wachau Valley. You can see the castle of Dürnstein in the distance there, and now we're heading up into Dürnstein. And this really is the end of that valley area, and beyond that, you get back into the flats of the the Danube River Basin. We're about 30K into the ride here. And this is a really old village. The castle on the top of the hill is where Richard the Lionheart was said to be held nearly 1,000 years ago. This is the Hotel Schloss Dürnstein, absolutely top-rated hotel. I've been meaning to go there with my wife and stay for a bit, just so we could do some more hiking and cycling and wine tasting in the area. It's a fully pedestrianized area. You can see lots of cyclists come through here. One of the great things along the trail is that with towns every couple of miles, there's no shortage of supermarkets to grab some groceries, restaurants, places here with lots of space for bikes to park and go in and have lunch. And you really get a sense of how touristy this has become. I remember years ago, this area was very, very quiet. The river cruises hadn't really picked up yet, and it was kind of a sleepy old town, but it's gotten a nice facelift. Again, buildings here, I think City Hall's from 1400. Walls that are 3 feet thick, and these towers and what were gates back in the day, just huge, thick stone walls. So leaving Dürnstein here, actually this trail here coming up on the left, this street that goes up to the left, that's the way to walk up to the ruins of the old castle. And yeah, so we start to head out of the Wachau Valley, leaving Dürnstein, and making our way towards the city of Krems. 2 more little towns to go through, the last little bits of the vineyards. This is the Unterleubern and Oberleubern, and they don't have much in the way of restaurants and places to stay, but it's just a nice little community of homes, and you have all the vineyards there. So, and of course, each village with the centuries-old church right in the center. So just really fun to be able to ride this back road. The main highway's about a quarter mile, half mile off to the right of this image, and that's where all the real traffic goes through. Krems, coming into Krems now, 38K, 23 miles into the ride. A very old town again, a university town now, a lot of young people, as a couple of major universities have moved up here. Again, a walled city, great little cobblestone streets through the old town, and then out towards the university, more modern, not high-rise but mid-rise apartment buildings and dormitories, and just a fun town to hang out in. And down by the river, you'll find an awful lot of the river cruise boats have docked along the side there, and people come out and walk through Krems. And you'll also get a lot of people who, I saw one group today, it was all Swedish. They all had Swedish hats on, and they were getting off the boat and getting on bikes, and they were going to ride and meet the boat upriver, 10 or 15 miles. So a nice day trip as part of a cruise. This is then the big park on the way out of Krems. And after Krems, you cross back over the Danube to what I would call the south side, the right side, heading downstream. As we're moving away from Krems and towards Tulln, it's kind of a long stretch here, almost 25 miles, almost 40 kilometers, with very few towns along the trail. I mean, you can get off and go into some of these little towns, but it's really sparse. This is an area where they had built an atomic power plant back in the 70s, but protests prevented them from ever opening it up, and that's called Zwentendorf, and that's what we see here. So the building remains, but this area never developed because people always thought it was going to be a nuke plant here, but that never came to be. But what they have done is they have built this one restaurant along the way here. So if you're going to do this way, make sure you have water and something to eat before you head down these 35, 40 kilometers. But you do know that there's one place where you can get fed and drinks, and there's water. A few miles later, we're heading down through into Tulln. This is the west side of Tulln. This is the Autobahn, the highway bridge that goes across the Danube at this point. And then you make your way into the town of Tulln. It's the town where Egon Schiele, famous artist from Austria, was born and raised before moving to Vienna to do most of his work. There's a really neat stage built out on pontoons here, and they have a great summer concert series. Tulln is called the Garden City. They have a big garden show expo every year, and thousands of people come out to see really pretty gardens and to go to that fair and see what the latest is in horticulture. And then this is the last bridge going across for about another 10 or 12 miles, but stayed on the south side. So now the third crossing I did on this trip was Greifenstein. Greifenstein is an electric power plant. There are many of them along the Danube in Austria, and this is another way to get back over to the north or the left bank as you're going downstream towards Vienna. It's a private power plant, but the bridge is open and you can go through. I think at night they might close this gate completely, but I've never seen it closed in all the times that I've ridden here. And then you just have to do this little hairpin that's coming up here and head back downriver, and you're really getting into the home stretch now. The last maybe 15 miles or so to Vienna. There's the actual castle of Greifenstein, as many castles were. It's one of these places built up on the hill where people could watch the river, see who's coming, for protection, collect taxes, whatever, back in the old days. But you can go up and visit that castle as well. Coming into Korneuburg, there's this really nice piece through the woods and over some of the old arms of the Danube that still exist that haven't been completely dried out. Some wooden bridges crossing some of those old waterways. And then getting back almost into Vienna here, the north end of the Donauinsel, the Danube island, that was built back in the 70s to create this incredible area for cycling and swimming and walking. And then really the end of the trip was very simple, coming down the canal. One of the first efforts to regulate the Danube back in the 19th century or maybe even earlier, to keep the flooding away from the city but still keep it navigable. And this was really close to the end of my ride. I just went down here a little bit more and then crossed this canal and up into the 18th district of Vienna where I live. So this was another extension of the bike trails in and around Vienna that just made this ride so easy to do. So here's the hardware again. I've got my GoPro Session Hero 4, the Garmin Edge Explore. I bought a new Ixi, not sure how you pronounce that, 10-liter waterproof seat post bag, and I've got my Rhino Walk handlebar bag, a couple of water bottles on my Marin Dsx 1, which I just bought about 6 or 8 weeks ago. Absolutely fantastic bike, and really enjoy riding that. I'm running WTB Riddler 45mm tires. A bit much for this ride, but great tires overall. Anyway, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and hope to see you out on the Danube trails of the EuroVelo 6 one of these days.